Hello and welcome to World News on TVP World. I'm Marie Cato. All eyes are now on Saudi Arabia, where U.S. and Ukrainian officials have gathered for crucial peace talks set for Tuesday. These discussions are seen as pivotal in shaping the future of U.S.-Ukraine relations amidst the ongoing conflict with Russia. The talks are happening as both the U.S. and Ukraine grapple with the escalating costs of the war and international pressure to find a way towards peace. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will not attend the talks in person, but will be represented by a high-level team, including his Chief of Staff Andriy Yermak, Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, and Defense Minister Rustem Umerov. The U.S. delegation will be led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who will meet with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to discuss the future of the conflict and the potential for peace. While President Trump has backed a mineral deal that would give the U.S. a stake in Ukraine's mineral resources, he expects Ukraine to adopt a more flexible stance in peace negotiations. Trump is urging Zelensky to consider territorial concessions to Russia, move forward with elections, and even contemplate stepping down. Ukrainian officials are aiming to push for the resumption of U.S. military aid and intelligence sharing during the talks, with Kyiv potentially proposing a partial ceasefire to gain Washington's support. For Ukrainian reactions to the peace talks in Saudi Arabia, let's go live to our correspondent Oz Chatterjee in Kyiv. Good afternoon, Oz. Tell us about what Kyiv's demands might be in Jeddah today.
Well, look, all eyes on Saudi Arabia for these crucial talks in Jeddah. The Americans will be expecting the Ukrainians to make progress on signing this mineral deal, and the Ukrainians will be hoping for their part the U.S. can be convinced to restore intelligence sharing with Ukraine that was cut by the Trump administration, and to restore military aid, this military aid that was approved by Biden that is still being sent in dribs and drabs by the U.S., which has now been suspended by the Trump administration. We do have a new line today from Sergei Lishchenko. He's an advisor to Zelensky's office about the kind of agreement that Zelensky may be willing to sign, to agree to with the US, saying, if you want a truce, we are ready, but not a truce on land, where Putin will take a break for a few months to heal his wounded, recruit more impoverished people from within this Russian empire, gather tens of thousands of slaves to storm fortifications, bring in more infantry from North Korea or another satellite country, and then resume the war. We are not ready for such a truce. So very clear-eyed comments there coming from one of Zelensky's senior advisors about the kinds of agreement that Ukraine would be willing to sign up to and the kinds of agreement it won't be willing to sign up to. The question is now, are the US and Ukraine singing from the same hymn sheet? From the comments coming from figures like Marco Rubio and President Trump and figures inside Zelensky's administration, there does not seem to be this agreement between these two sides yet. Still, all to play for this week in Jeddah, and more will be brought to you from those discussions right here on TVP World.
Many thanks. That was Oz Chatterjee reporting for us live from Kyiv. At least 6 people were killed and 22 were wounded in Russian strikes across Ukraine over the past day, Ukrainian regional officials reported. The latest Russian attacks last night and on Monday morning targeted multiple regions of Ukraine. Many residential buildings, houses, cars, agricultural machinery, as well as power lines throughout the country were destroyed. The regions which suffered the greatest losses were Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia. In a statement, the Ukrainian Air Force announced that it had intercepted 130 out of 176 Russian drones launched overnight. It also added that another 42 drones disappeared from radar before reaching their targets. Following the exchange between Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on X, it has been confirmed that the Starlink system in Ukraine will remain active. Polish Foreign Ministry spokesperson Paweł Wroński confirmed this, adding, quote, that we can now be sure that the U.S. is aware of Russia's intentions in invading Ukraine.
Minister Sikorski's main interlocutor in this conversation was Secretary of State Marco Rubio. A very strong, unequivocal assurance was given that Starlink would not be cut off and would continue to be used in Ukraine. Secondly, the statement that Russia could be on the border with Poland demonstrates that the US side is aware of Russia's intentions. These intentions are not limited. Russia aims to control the entire territory of Ukraine and all the outcomes that entails.
The Polish Ministry of Defense has unveiled the ultimate building machine, a system capable of manufacturing key components of the East Shield. Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz compared the system to a printer that will build key elements for the safety of the Polish eastern border.
The ultimate building machine is the kind of guardian that will protect us and produce shelters, warehouses and hangars in a short time. Figuratively speaking, it is such a big printer able to quickly build the elements of East Shield that are absolutely necessary for our security. The whole philosophy of this deterrence and defense program is focused on building infrastructure that will be useful at the time of a threat. This infrastructure is sometimes reinforced concrete hedgehogs, system of various kinds to protect us from the movement of an adversary troops, to facilitate the movement of our own troops.
Despite continued calls for the strengthening of European arms production capabilities, a recent study coming out of Stockholm paints a very different picture. Over the last 4 years, Europe's arms imports from across the Atlantic have only increased.
At a press conference Sunday in Brussels, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen reiterated Europe's commitment to unleashing its homegrown defense potential.
This week brought unanimous support for Rearm Europe. You're familiar with the 800 billion package for defense. And that is historic. This can be the foundation of a European defense union. We will drive the Rearm Europe plan forward with full force. The idea behind it is we must unleash the full potential in the face of concrete threats.
New research from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute reveals a much different picture, however. According to the report, combined arms imports by European NATO states more than doubled between the period 2015 to 19 and 2020 to 24. The report makes it clear that in the 2017 to 2021 period, transatlantic relations had already come under strain during U.S. President Donald Trump's first administration, and there had already been calls from European NATO states to take steps to reduce their dependence on arms imports and to strengthen the arms industry in Europe. Now, despite the fact that this strain has only increased during Trump's second term, the report found little evidence that any progress has been made. And between 2015 and 2019, the U.S.'s share of arms imports to Europe was just over half of the total, at 52%. By 2020 to 2024, that share had risen substantially to 64% of the total. Now, the fact that the next biggest suppliers were France and South Korea at just 6.55% each only underscored this dependence on American imports. Now, as part of the Rearm Europe program, the EU has proposed new defense funding initiatives, including a €150 billion loan scheme to strengthen Europe's military industry. But the European industry has to offer a competitive product, and that's easier said than done. The U.S. still dominates, particularly in advanced systems like combat aircraft. Meanwhile, China's imports of arms shrunk by 64% between the two periods, as the country increasingly substituted them with their own locally designed and produced weapons systems.
Russia announced on Monday it is expelling 2 British diplomats over suspicion of carrying out espionage and spying activities. The move is part of a tit-for-tat exchange between Russia and the UK, as both countries have repeatedly expelled each other's diplomats. According to British media, one of the 2 diplomats being expelled is second secretary at the British Embassy in Moscow, and the other is a spouse of another diplomat. The 2 have been given 2 weeks to leave Russia. Also on Monday, Russia's foreign ministry summoned the representative of the British Embassy in Moscow to inform him of the decision. This marks the latest round in a tit-for-tat cycle of diplomatic expulsions between Russia and the UK. Last year, both countries expelled each other's military attachés, the highest-ranking positions lost so far. We will not allow hard-won peace to be jeopardized, said NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte on Monday as he met with high-level officials in Bosnia and Herzegovina. His visit comes amid a festering political crisis that has seen the country's High Representative Christian Schmidt locked in a bitter feud with Milorad Dodik, President of Republika Srpska.
We will not allow hard-won peace to be jeopardized. NATO will continue to support you on your European and on your Euro-Atlantic path, on which you are advancing. We do this along with our international partners, including the European Union, as well as the High Representative, again, whose authority must be preserved. It is essential that the political leaders of Bosnia and Herzegovina do their share as well. The entire region will benefit from a genuine commitment to reconciliation and lasting peace.
Protests have erupted in Romania's capital, Bucharest, following the rejection of the presidential candidacy of right-wing populist Călin Georgescu. The move, which came after Georgescu's candidacy was initially filed, has sparked anger among his supporters, igniting demonstrations outside the Central Electoral Bureau's headquarters.
On Sunday evening, hundreds of protesters gathered in front of the Central Electoral Bureau in Bucharest after the electoral body dismissed Georgescu's presidential bid. The protest quickly escalated into clashes between demonstrators and riot police, with stones thrown and fire set in the streets.
It's no longer about who supports one side or the other. It's about the fact that we are a people and we have every right to vote for whoever we want. And to reject a candidate with 350,000 signatures is not fair and not normal.
I'm here now because they rejected Mr. Georgescu's candidacy. He is the spirit of the Romanian people, as you can see from all the people here.
This rejection follows a ruling by Romania's Constitutional Court that invalidated last year's presidential election. Georgescu, who is making a second attempt to secure victory, has filed for candidacy only days ago. This decision is deeply rooted in claims of non-compliance with electoral regulations. Political tensions are high in Romania as allegations of Russian interference have clouded the election process. A criminal investigation is currently underway against Georgescu. Despite the protests, the rerun of the presidential election is set for May 4th, with a possible runoff scheduled for May 18th.
On Monday morning, Kosovo's Prime Minister Albin Kurti, leader of the left-wing nationalist party that won the most votes in February's parliamentary elections, accused Serbia of interference. He claimed that Serbian Prime Minister Aleksandar Vučić weakened moderate Serbian minority parties that support rejoining Kosovo's institutions and breaking away from Belgrade's influence.
The state of Serbia has made extraordinary efforts to harm rival Serb parties, particularly the Party for Freedom, Justice and Survival of Nenad Rasić and the Serbian Democracy Party of Aleksandar Arsenijević, as well as voters from other communities, mainly Roma and Ashkali. Certain representatives from all other political parties have withdrawn from the race after receiving threats. These cases have been recorded in the 4 northern municipalities and the other 6 Serb-majority municipalities.
A 24-hour strike by employees is taking place at 13 German airports on Monday amid new contract negotiations. All flights are severely disrupted or cancelled. Around 23,000 employees working at airports across Germany are participating in the action. At Hamburg Airport, however, the strike began a day earlier on Sunday, leading to flight cancellations which affected more than 40,000 passengers. According to the airport's management, only 10 of more than 280 scheduled flights went as planned, and many service desks sat empty as would-be passengers lined up to seek information about the cancellations. The airport strike in Germany is part of a wider wave of protests by the country's public sector workers in recent weeks who demand an 8% rise in monthly wages. And that's all that we have for you at World News at 2 p.m. Stay tuned for more on TVP World.